He tore his pregnant ex-wife's dress at his own wedding. Right there in front of 300 guests, in front of cameras, in front of God and everybody, he ripped that woman's clothing like she was nothing. Like she was garbage. He wanted to destroy her, to crush whatever dignity she had left. But what Nia did next, what she revealed in that moment of humiliation, brought him to his knees and turned his perfect wedding into a nightmare he would never forget. And that was just the beginning of his downfall. Hello friends, welcome to our story. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Houston? London? Maybe Jamaica or Canada? We want to know. Once upon a time in a big city full of shiny office buildings and expensive restaurants, there lived a man named Darius King. He was 32 years old and everyone said he was going places. Darius was the CEO of King Financial Technologies, a tech company that helped people invest their money through an app. The company was growing fast. Rich investors were putting millions of dollars into it. Business magazines wrote articles about him with titles like The New Face of Black Excellence and Young, Brilliant, and Breaking Barriers. Darius was handsome in that polished way that looks perfect in photographs. He kept his beard trimmed just right. His suits were custom-made and fitted perfectly to his body. He wore a gold Rolex watch that caught the light whenever he moved his wrist. When he walked into a room, people noticed. When he spoke, people listened. He had mastered the art of looking successful, and in a world that worships success, that made him powerful. He lived in a modern loft apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows, leather furniture, and abstract art on the walls that cost thousands of dollars but looked like something a child might paint. His kitchen had marble countertops he never cooked on because he ate at expensive restaurants most nights. Everything in Darius's life was designed to impress, to announce to the world that he had made it, that he was somebody important. But 3 years ago, before the money and the fame and the magazine covers, Darius King had been married to a woman named Nia Brooks. Nia Brooks was everything Darius pretended not to remember. She had loved him when he was nobody, when his company was just an idea he talked about late at night in their tiny apartment. She had believed in him when investors laughed at his pitch. She had worked 2 jobs, waitressing during the day and cleaning offices at night, so he could quit his job and focus on building his business. She had held him when he wanted to give up. She had celebrated with him when he got his first investor. She had been his partner, his supporter, his wife. And then, just when everything started working, just when the money started coming in and important people started knowing his name, Nia got pregnant. Darius had looked at her that day, standing in their bathroom holding a positive pregnancy test with tears of joy in her eyes, and something cold had moved through his chest. He didn't see a blessing. He didn't see their future child. He saw an obstacle. He saw something that would slow him down, something that would make him look less attractive to investors who wanted a CEO who could work 80 hours a week. He saw a woman whose body would change, who would need things from him, who would tie him to a life that suddenly felt too small for the man he was becoming. 2 weeks later, he asked for a divorce. He told her she was hood baggage. He told her she would never fit into the world he was building. He told her that the neighborhood she came from, the way she talked, the way she dressed, everything about her was wrong for the image he needed to project. He told her a baby would ruin everything he'd worked for. He offered her money for an abortion. When she refused, he walked out and never looked back. That was 6 months ago. Now, on this cool November evening, Nia Brooks sat in her small studio apartment in a neighborhood far from the gleaming downtown towers where Darius lived. The apartment was barely big enough for a bed, a tiny kitchen area, and a bathroom. The walls were thin. She could hear her neighbors arguing through the wall on one side and a baby crying on the other side. The carpet was old and stained. The refrigerator made a humming sound that kept her awake some nights. But it was hers. Or at least it would be hers for another week if she could figure out how to pay rent. Nia sat on her second-hand couch with one hand resting on her pregnant belly. She was 6 months along now and her baby was active, kicking and moving like she was already eager to meet the world. Nia was only 27 years old, but lately she felt ancient, worn down by worry and exhaustion and the constant struggle to survive. On the scratched coffee table in front of her sat a pile of bills that made her stomach hurt to look at. Rent, $1,200, due in 6 days. Electric bill, $180, already 2 weeks overdue with a shutoff warning stamped in red. Medical bills from her prenatal appointments, $340. Phone bill, $85. And she had exactly $230 in her bank account. She had been working as a part-time cashier at a grocery store, but they'd cut her hours last month. She'd applied for dozens of jobs, but nobody wanted to hire a visibly pregnant woman who would need time off in 3 months. Her mother lived in another state and was battling cancer, so she couldn't help. Her father had died when she was young. She had a few friends, but they were all struggling just like she was. Nia picked up a piece of bread from the small plate beside her. It was the last of the loaf. In her refrigerator there were 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, and some butter. That was it. That was all the food she had, and she wouldn't get paid again for another week. She took a small bite of the bread and felt her baby kick as if to say, "Mama, I'm hungry too." Tears filled Nia's eyes. She tried so hard not to cry these days because crying didn't pay bills and it didn't fill refrigerators and it didn't make the world any less cruel. But sometimes the tears came anyway. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered, rubbing her belly gently. "I'm so sorry you got stuck with a mama who can't even feed herself. But I promise you I'm trying. I'm trying so hard." Her phone buzzed on the couch beside her. Nia wiped her eyes and picked it up, expecting another bill collector or another rejection email from a job application. But the number on the screen was local and unfamiliar. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello. Hello, is this Nia Brooks?" A woman's voice, professional and polished. "Yes, this is Nia." "Hi Nia, my name is Jennifer, calling from Elite Event Staffing. We got your name from the temp agency you're registered with. Are you currently available for work?" Nia sat up straighter, her heart suddenly beating faster. Yes, I am." "What kind of work?" "We have a high-end event this Saturday evening at the Grand Marquis Hotel downtown. It's a wedding reception for a very prominent client. We need servers and ushers to help with guest services. The pay is $500 for the evening plus tips. Cash payment at the end of the night. Would you be interested?" $500. Nia's mind raced. That was almost half her rent. That was food for 2 weeks. That was keeping the lights on. "Yes," she said quickly. "Yes, I'm very interested." "Wonderful. Now I do need to let you know, this is a black tie event with very strict professional standards. You'll need to wear all black, neat appearance, and our clients expect impeccable service. Can you meet those requirements?" "Absolutely," Nia said. She would figure it out. She had one decent black dress that still fit over her belly. She would make it work. "Perfect. Let me get your information confirmed and I'll email you all the details. The event is this Saturday at 6 p.m. Please arrive by 4:30 for orientation. And Nia, this is a very important client, so please be on time and professional." "I will be. Thank you so much." When the call ended, Nia felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Oh, $500 wouldn't solve everything, but it would give her breathing room. It would feed her baby. It would keep the lights on for another month. She didn't let herself think about how hard it would be to stand on her feet for 5 hours while 6 months pregnant. She didn't let herself think about how much her back already ached or how swollen her ankles got by the end of each day. None of that mattered. She needed this money. She needed it desperately. That night, Nia went through her tiny closet looking for something appropriate to wear. She found her black dress, the one she'd worn to a funeral 2 years ago. She tried it on and it still fit, barely stretched tight over her belly but decent enough. She found her only pair of black flats, old and scuffed but clean. She would polish them. She would make herself look as professional as possible. "We're going to be okay, baby," she whispered to her belly as she hung the dress up carefully. "Mama's got a job. Just for one night, but it's something. It's a start." The next morning, Nia received an email with all the event details. She opened it on her phone while eating a single egg for breakfast, trying to make her food last as long as possible. The email had the hotel address, the arrival time, the dress code requirements, and at the bottom, a file attachment labeled, Event Information Package. Nia clicked on it absently, expecting some kind of staff handbook or service guidelines. The first page had a logo at the top in elegant gold script, the King Pierce Wedding. Nia stared at the words. King. That was a common last name. It didn't mean anything. She scrolled down and her heart stopped. There, filling the screen of her phone, was a professional engagement photo. Darius King in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his arm around a beautiful woman in a designer dress. The woman was stunning, light-skinned with long flowing hair and a smile that belonged on magazine covers. The caption underneath read, "Celebrating the union of Darius King, CEO of King Financial Technologies, and Alana Pierce, lifestyle influencer and entrepreneur." The phone slipped from Nia's fingers and clattered onto the floor. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. Her whole body went cold and then hot and then cold again. Darius was getting married. And she had just agreed to work at his wedding. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and scrolled frantically through the rest of the document. There he was again in photo after photo. Darius at charity galas. Darius receiving business awards. Darius and Alana at red carpet events, looking like the perfect power couple. And then Nia saw the wedding details. 300 guests. Live band. 7-course dinner. The most expensive wedding package the Grand Marquis Hotel offered. Her ex-husband, the man who had called her hood baggage and walked out on her and their unborn child, was having a wedding that probably cost more than she would earn in 5 years. And somehow, impossibly, cruelly, she had been hired to serve drinks at it. Nia's mind raced. This couldn't be a coincidence. The temp agency had hundreds of people registered. There were dozens of pregnant women who needed work. How had they chosen her specifically? How had her name ended up on the list for this particular event? And then, like ice water down her spine, she understood. Darius had done this on purpose. He had somehow found out where she was registered for temp work. He had requested her specifically. He had arranged for her to be called, to be offered this job, to be put in a position where she was desperate enough to accept. He wanted her there. He wanted her to see him on his perfect day with his perfect new bride in his perfect new life. He wanted her to serve him drinks while she was pregnant and poor and struggling. He wanted to humiliate her one more time, to prove once and for all that he had won and she had lost. Nia sat on her couch, staring at the phone in her hand, her whole body trembling with anger and hurt and something else. Something that felt like the moment before a storm breaks. She should refuse. She should call Jennifer back right now and quit. She should protect herself and her baby and her dignity. She should walk away. But then she looked around her tiny apartment. At the bills on the table. At the empty refrigerator. At the eviction notice she'd hidden under a magazine because she couldn't stand to look at it anymore. $500. That was the price of her pride. And right now, in this moment, with a baby growing inside her and electricity about to be shut off and no food in the kitchen, pride felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Nia closed her eyes and placed both hands on her belly. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you're going to see your mama serve drinks to the man who abandoned us. But we need this money. We need it so badly." Her baby kicked, a strong solid thump against her palm, and Nia made her decision. She would go to that wedding. She would put on her old black dress and her scuffed shoes and she would hold her head up as high as she could manage. She would take Darius King's money and she would survive one more month. And maybe, if there was any justice in this cruel world, maybe someday karma would catch up with him. But she had no way of knowing that karma was already working. She had no way of knowing that this wedding, this terrible humiliating trap, would become the moment everything changed. She had no way of knowing that sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the beginning of something better. All she knew right now was that in 4 days she would stand in a ballroom full of rich strangers and watch her ex-husband marry another woman. And somehow she would have to survive it. The next 4 days passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. Nia barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes she saw Darius's face, that cold look he'd given her the day he walked out. She heard his voice telling her she wasn't good enough, that she would drag him down, that their baby was a mistake he refused to make. Her best friend Tasha came over on Thursday evening and found Nia sitting on the floor of her apartment, staring at the black dress hanging on the back of her door. Tasha Miller was everything Nia needed right now. She was 31 years old, worked 2 jobs herself, one as a nursing assistant at a hospital and another doing hair on weekends in her kitchen. Tasha didn't have much money either, but she had something more valuable. She had fire. She had fight. She had a way of looking at the world that refused to accept defeat. "Girl, what are you doing sitting on the floor like that?" Tasha asked, setting down a plastic bag from the corner store. "I brought you some groceries. Rice, beans, chicken, vegetables. Real food." Nia looked up at her friend and felt tears burn behind her eyes again. "Tasha, you can't keep feeding me. You have your own bills." "Shut up and say thank you," Tasha said firmly, heading to the tiny kitchen to put the food away. "Now tell me what's wrong. And don't say nothing because I can see it all over your face." So Nia told her. She told her about the job offer, about the wedding, about realizing it was Darius's wedding, about understanding that he had arranged this whole thing just to hurt her. When she finished, Tasha stood completely still for a long moment, her hand frozen in the air holding a can of beans. Then she very carefully set the can down on the counter and turned to face Nia. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Tasha said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Your ex-husband, the man who abandoned you while you were pregnant with his child, the man who called you hood baggage and offered you money to kill your baby, that man deliberately hired you to work at his wedding so he could humiliate you in front of all his rich friends?" "Yes," Nia whispered. "And you're actually going to do it?" "I need the money, Tasha." I need it so badly. My lights are about to get cut off. I have 3 eggs and half a gallon of milk in my refrigerator. My rent is due in 2 days and I'm $970 short. What choice do I have? Tasha walked over and sat down on the floor next to Nia. She took her friend's hand and squeezed it hard. Listen to me very carefully, Tasha said. I understand why you need this money. I get it. And I'm not going to tell you not to go because I know what it's like to be broke and desperate and scared. But Nia, you cannot let that man see you broken. You cannot give him that satisfaction. I don't know how to be anything but broken right now, Nia said, and her voice cracked. Look at me, Tasha. I'm 6 months pregnant, living in a place that's barely bigger than a closet, eating eggs for dinner, about to be evicted. How am I supposed to pretend I'm not broken? You're not broken, Tasha said fiercely. You're surviving. You're growing a whole human being inside your body while working and struggling and fighting every single day. That's not broken, Nia. That's strength. That's power. And you need to walk into that wedding remembering that. Nia wanted to believe her. She wanted to feel strong. But mostly she just felt tired and scared and small. What if I can't do it? She whispered. What if I get there and I just fall apart? Tasha was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said something that surprised Nia. Then fall apart. But fall apart on your own terms. Don't let him control your breakdown. Don't let him decide how this goes. She paused. And Nia, I know you need this money. But if you're going to walk into hell, at least keep your eyes open. Watch him. Watch everything. People like Darius, people who are that cruel, they always have secrets. Always. And secrets have a way of coming out at the worst possible times. Nia didn't fully understand what Tasha meant, but she nodded anyway. That night, after Tasha left, Nia lay in bed with her hands on her belly and talked to her baby the way she did every night. Your daddy doesn't want us, she said softly. But that's okay because we're going to be okay anyway. I don't know how yet, but we will be. I promise you, little one. I promise. Her baby kicked in response and Nia closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Saturday arrived too quickly. Nia woke up at noon after a restless night full of bad dreams. The wedding didn't start until 6 p.m., but she had to be there by 4:30. She spent the early afternoon trying to eat something, trying to calm her racing heart, trying to prepare herself mentally for what was coming. At 2 p.m. she got in the shower and stood under the hot water until it ran cold. She washed her hair and conditioned it carefully. She shaved her legs even though they would be covered by her dress, because doing normal things made her feel slightly less like she was walking toward her own execution. She got out and looked at herself in the foggy bathroom mirror. Her face looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes that makeup probably wouldn't hide. Her body had changed so much in 6 months. Her belly was round and firm, undeniably pregnant. Her breasts were fuller. Her hips were wider. She looked like a mother already, even though she hadn't given birth yet. She wondered what Darius would think when he saw her. Would he feel anything at all? Would there be even a flicker of guilt or regret? Or would he just feel satisfied that his plan to humiliate her was working? At 3 p.m., Nia started getting dressed. She put on the black dress and it fit barely. The fabric stretched tight across her belly, making her pregnancy impossible to hide. She put on the black flats and looked at herself in the full-length mirror she'd found at a thrift store. She looked like exactly what she was. A poor, pregnant woman wearing an old dress and cheap shoes, about to work at a wedding she had no business being at. You can do this, she told her reflection. 5 hours. $500. You can do this. But her reflection didn't look convinced. At 3:45 p.m., Nia called an Uber because she couldn't afford to be late and the bus would take too long. The ride cost $18, money she didn't have, but she added it to her credit card that was already maxed out and tried not to think about it. The driver, an older black man with kind eyes, looked at her in the rearview mirror. Big event at the Grand Marquis tonight, he said conversationally. Some rich guy's wedding. Traffic's going to be crazy downtown. I know, Nia said quietly. I'm working there. Oh yeah? You a server? Something like that. He nodded. Well, these rich folks tip good usually. Hope you make some good money tonight, sister. If only he knew, Nia thought. If only anyone knew what she was walking into. The Grand Marquis Hotel rose up from downtown like a palace. It was 30 stories of glass and marble and luxury that Nia had only ever seen from the outside. The entrance had a red carpet, actual red carpet, and there were already expensive cars pulling up. Bentleys, Mercedes, BMWs, even a Rolls-Royce. Men in tuxedos and women in gowns were walking in, laughing and talking, their jewelry catching the late afternoon sun. Nia's Uber pulled up to the side entrance where a small sign read, "Staff and deliveries only." "Here you go," the driver said. Then more gently, "Hey, whatever you're going through, you're going to get through it. I can see it in your eyes. You're stronger than you think." Nia felt her throat tighten. "Thank you," she managed to say. She got out of the car and walked toward the staff entrance, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst right out of her chest. Inside the staff area was chaos. Caterers rushed back and forth with trays. Florists made last-minute adjustments to enormous flower arrangements. A man in a headset was barking orders into a walkie-talkie. Nia found the check-in table where a stressed-looking woman with a clipboard was directing traffic. "Name?" the woman asked without looking up. "Nia Brooks. I'm with Elite Event Staffing." The woman scanned her list, found Nia's name and checked it off. "Server position, Station 3. You'll be handling drink service for the west side of the reception hall. Jennifer should be around here somewhere to get you oriented." She handed Nia a name tag and waved her toward a hallway. "Orientation room is down there, second door on the left." Nia took the name tag with shaking hands and walked down the hallway. With each step, she felt more and more like she was walking into a trap. But she kept going because what choice did she have? The orientation room held about 20 other staff members, all wearing black like her. Some were young college students making extra money. Some were older folks who had worked events like this for years. And then there was Nia, 6 months pregnant and about to serve drinks at her ex-husband's wedding. A polished woman in her 30s walked to the front of the room. "This must be Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being on time. This is a very high-profile event and our client has extremely high standards. I need impeccable service from all of you tonight. That means smiling, being attentive but not intrusive, and absolutely no personal phone use during your shift." She went on for another 10 minutes about procedures and protocols. Nia barely heard any of it. Her mind was somewhere else, preparing for the moment when she would see Darius for the first time in 6 months. "One more thing," Jennifer said, and something in her tone made Nia focus. "Mr. King, the groom, has requested that all staff remain completely professional at all times. He's a very prominent businessman and there will be media present. If any of you have any personal connection to the bride or groom, you need to let me know immediately." Nia's mouth went dry. She should speak up. She should say something. But what would happen if she did? Would they fire her on the spot? Would she lose the $500 she desperately needed? She stayed silent and hated herself for it. After orientation, the staff was sent to their positions. Nia was assigned to a service station near the west wing of the grand ballroom. She was given a tray and told to circulate with champagne during the cocktail hour before dinner. At 5:30 p.m., the ballroom doors opened and Nia got her first look at where the reception would be held. It was breathtaking. The room was massive, big enough to hold 300 people easily. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Round tables were draped in cream silk with centerpieces of white roses and orchids that must have cost thousands of dollars. A stage at the far end held a full band setting up their instruments. Everywhere Nia looked, there was gold and crystal and flowers and elegance. This was the kind of wedding little girls dreamed about. This was fairy tale money. This was the life Darius had built after he left her behind. Nia felt something twist in her chest, something that was part pain and part rage and part grief for everything she had lost. "You okay, honey?" an older black woman asked. She was another server, maybe in her 50s, with kind eyes behind her glasses. "I'm fine," Nia lied. "You sure? You look like you're about to be sick. And no judgment, baby. Being pregnant and on your feet like this is hard. I did it myself 20 years ago. If you need to sit down, I can cover your section for a few minutes." The kindness almost broke Nia completely. She blinked back tears and forced a smile. "Thank you, but I'm okay." "Really?" The woman patted her arm gently. "Well, you let me know if you need anything. My name's Dorothy. We women got to look out for each other." At 6 p.m. exactly, guests started arriving for the cocktail hour. They came in waves, all dressed in expensive formal wear, all laughing and talking with the ease of people who had never worried about rent or electricity bills or where their next meal would come from. Nia picked up her tray of champagne glasses and began to circulate, offering drinks with a quiet "champagne?" and a smile that felt like it might crack her face. Most guests barely looked at her. She was invisible to them, just another server in black, part of the background that made their evening elegant and smooth. But then at 6:23 p.m. Nia saw him. Darius King stood near the entrance greeting guests, and he looked exactly like the photos in the magazines. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, probably custom-made. His shoes gleamed. His beard was trimmed to perfection. He wore that same confident smile, that same air of success and power. And next to him stood Alana Pierce. She was even more beautiful in person than in her photos. Her skin glowed. Her hair fell in perfect waves down her back. Her engagement ring was so large it caught the light from across the room. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than some people's salary, and she smiled at every guest with genuine warmth. Nia stood frozen, her tray of champagne growing heavy in her hands. For a moment, just a moment, she thought maybe Darius wouldn't notice her. Maybe she could stay on the other side of the room all night and he would never even see her. But then, as if he felt her staring, Darius turned his head. His eyes found her across the crowded room. And Nia watched his expression change from welcoming host to something cold and satisfied. His lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had seen her. He knew she was there. And from the look on his face, this was exactly what he had wanted. Nia's hands started shaking so badly that the champagne glasses clinked against each other on the tray. Darius said something to Alana, kissed her cheek and started walking across the ballroom. Toward Nia. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. She could only stand there and watch him approach, knowing that whatever was about to happen, it was going to hurt. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne, the same cologne he used to wear when they were married. Nia, he said, his voice smooth and pleasant, like they were old friends running into each other. I wasn't sure you'd actually show up. Nia's throat felt like it had closed completely. She stood there holding her tray of champagne, staring at the man she had once loved, the man who had destroyed her life, and she couldn't find her voice. I needed the work, she finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Darius's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. His eyes traveled slowly down to her belly, lingering there with an expression that made her skin crawl. It wasn't regret or guilt or even curiosity. It was satisfaction. Pure, cold satisfaction. I can see that, he said quietly so only she could hear. Didn't know you cleaned up this well? For a server? The words hit her like a slap. She felt her face grow hot, felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Don't cry, she told herself. Don't give him that. I need you to stay in the background tonight, Darius continued, his voice still pleasant but with steel underneath. Way in the background. This is my day, my moment, and I don't need you making a scene or drawing attention to yourself. Can you do that, Nia? Can you be professional? Something in the way he said, professional, made it sound like the dirtiest word in the world. Like he was reminding her that she was beneath him, that she was here to serve while he celebrated. Nia forced herself to look him in the eyes. She forced herself to stand up straight despite how much she wanted to curl into a ball and disappear. Yes, Mr. King, she said, and the formality of it felt like the only weapon she had. For just a second, something flickered across Darius's face. Surprise maybe, or frustration. He had wanted her to fall apart. He had wanted her to cry or beg or show him how much power he still had over her. And by calling him Mr. King instead of Darius, instead of breaking down, she had denied him that satisfaction. But then his smooth mask was back in place. Good, he said. We understand each other then. He turned and walked back to Alana, slipping his arm around her waist and kissing her temple, and Nia stood there feeling like she might actually be sick. Dorothy, the older server, appeared at her elbow. You know that man? She asked quietly. No, Nia lied. Just a demanding client. Dorothy looked at her for a long moment, and Nia knew she didn't believe her. But Dorothy was kind enough not to push. Well, you stay away from him if you can, Dorothy said. I've worked enough of these events to know that type. Mean under all that polish. Real mean. If only she knew how right she was. The next hour passed in a blur. Nia circulated with her tray, offering champagne, smiling until her face hurt, trying to be invisible the way Darius had demanded. She watched the guests laugh and dance and celebrate, watched Darius hold court like a king among his subjects, watched Alana glow with happiness, completely unaware of the cruelty her fiancé was capable of. And then at 7:45 p.m., Nia saw Alana walking toward the service area, her beautiful cream dress flowing behind her. Excuse me, Alana said, her voice soft and a little breathless. Could I get some water? Just regular water, no ice. Up close, Alana was even more stunning. Her makeup was flawless. Her skin seemed to glow from within. But there was something in her eyes, something anxious and uncertain that made Nia realize that despite all her beauty and wealth, Alana was nervous. Maybe even scared. Of course, Nia said and went to get a glass of water from the service station. When she came back, Alana took it gratefully and drank half of it in one long swallow. "Thank you so much," she said, and her smile was genuine. "I know this sounds crazy, but I'm so nervous I can barely breathe. You'd think after all the events I've been to, I wouldn't be scared of my own wedding, but—" She laughed, a little shaky. "I just want everything to be perfect. Darius has worked so hard for this day." Nia felt something twist in her chest. Alana had no idea. She had no idea who she was marrying. She had no idea what Darius had done, what he was capable of. "I'm sure it will be beautiful," Nia heard herself say, even though the words tasted like poison. "You're so sweet," Alana said. Then she noticed Nia's belly for the first time. "Oh my goodness, when are you due?" "March," Nia said quietly. "That's wonderful. You're first." "Yes." "Well, congratulations, Mama. Pregnancy is such a blessing." Alana smiled again, touched Nia's arm gently, and then floated away back to her guests. Nia stood there feeling like she might actually break into pieces. Alana was kind. Alana was nice. Alana wasn't the enemy. She was just another woman who had been fooled by Darius King's perfect mask. At 8 p.m., Nia was taking a moment to rest her feet in a quiet hallway near the bathrooms when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and her heart sank. Darius stood at the end of the hallway, and this time there was no one else around. No guests, no other staff, no witnesses. Just the two of them alone for the first time in 6 months. He walked toward her slowly, deliberately, and Nia instinctively backed up until she hit the wall. "Having fun?" Darius asked, and his voice was different now. Colder. The mask was off. "I'm just doing my job," Nia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your job," Darius repeated, and he laughed, but it was an ugly sound. "Look at you, Nia. Look at what you've become. A server. Nobody. Pregnant and broke and desperate enough to work my wedding. This is what you are now while I—" He gestured back toward the ballroom. "While I marry up. While I marry someone who actually belongs in my world." The cruelty in his voice was breathtaking. Nia had known he could be cold, but this was something else. This was a man who enjoyed causing pain. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you hire me? Why are you doing this?" Darius stepped closer. "Because I wanted you to see. I wanted you to understand exactly what you lost when I left. I wanted you to know that you were never good enough for me, that you will never be good enough for the life I'm building. And I wanted you to watch me marry a real woman while you serve drinks in a cheap dress." Tears burned behind Nia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I was good enough to support you when you had nothing. I was good enough to work 2 jobs so you could build your company. I was good enough when you needed me." "That was different," Darius said dismissively. "That was before I knew what I could become. Before I understood that to win in this world you have to cut off dead weight. And Nia, you were dead weight. You still are." He looked down at her belly with disgust. "And that baby you're carrying? That's my biggest mistake. But here's what you need to understand. If you embarrass me tonight, if you say one word to anyone about our past, if you do anything to ruin my day, I will make sure you never work in this town again. I have connections. I have power. I can make your life even more miserable than it already is. Do we understand each other?" Nia stared at him, this man she had once loved, this man she had once believed in, and she realized that she had never really known him at all. The Darius she had married had been a mask, just like the one he wore for his guests. This was the real him. Cruel, calculating, heartless. "Yes," she whispered. "I understand." "Good." Darius straightened his tuxedo jacket, smoothed his hair. The mask slipped back into place. "Now get back to work." He walked away, leaving Nia alone in the hallway with her heart racing and her hands shaking. But something had changed. As Darius walked away, as the sound of his footsteps faded, Nia felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't acceptance. It was something else entirely. It was rage. Pure, burning rage that started in her belly and spread through her whole body like fire. This man had taken everything from her. Her marriage, her stability, her hope, her dignity. He had abandoned his own child. And now he had brought her here, to this place, to humiliate her one more time just because he could. And she had let him. She had taken it. She had said, "Yes, Mr. King," and let him treat her like she was nothing. But standing there alone in that hallway, with her baby kicking inside her as if to say, "Mama, we deserve better," Nia made a decision. She didn't know what she was going to do yet. She didn't have a plan. But she knew with absolute certainty that she was not going to let Darius King have the last word. Not tonight. Not ever again. She walked back into the ballroom with her head up, her eyes dry, and something dangerous burning in her chest. At 8:30 p.m., the wedding planner, a meticulously dressed black man in his 40s, gathered all the servers together near the kitchen entrance. "All right, everyone, listen up," he said. His name tag read, Malik Johnson, Event Coordinator. He had the kind of sharp eyes that didn't miss anything. In about 30 minutes, during the reception, Mr. King requested a special moment. "We're going to bring some of the staff forward to honor the people who serve. It's going to be a nice photo opportunity, very elegant. I'll call you when it's time. Just come forward, smile, accept the applause, and step back. Simple. Understood." The other servers nodded, excited about the recognition. But Nia felt ice slide down her spine. This was it. This was what Darius had been planning. Whatever humiliation he had arranged, this was when it would happen. She looked across the ballroom and saw Darius watching her with that same cold smile. He knew she had figured it out. And he didn't care. Dorothy noticed Nia's expression. "You okay, baby? You look pale." "I'm fine," Nia said automatically. But her hand had gone to her belly, protective and afraid. At 9 p.m., the wedding ceremony began. All the servers were required to stand at the back of the ballroom, quiet and still, while the 300 guests took their seats. Nia stood with her empty tray, her feet aching, her back screaming, watching as Darius and Alana took their places at the front. The officiant, an older black man with a warm voice, began to speak about love and commitment and partnership. About two people becoming one. About promises that would last a lifetime. And Nia had to stand there and watch her ex-husband, the father of her unborn child, recite vows he had never given her. "I promise to love you in good times and bad," Darius said, looking into Alana's eyes with perfect sincerity. "I promise to stand by you, to support you, to never abandon you no matter what challenges we face." Lies. All lies. Beautiful, polished lies. Alana's voice trembled with emotion when it was her turn. "I promise to be your partner, your best friend, your biggest supporter. I promise to build a life with you, to grow with you, to love you forever." She meant every word. Nia could hear it in her voice. Alana was walking into a trap and she had no idea. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," and Darius pulled Alana into his arms and kissed her while 300 people applauded, Nia felt a tear slide down her cheek despite all her efforts to hold it back. Her hand rested on her belly, and she felt her baby kick, as if even the child inside her could sense the wrongness of this moment. The newlyweds walked back down the aisle, beaming, and the ballroom erupted in cheers. The band started playing. Servers rushed forward with the first course of dinner. The celebration had officially begun. And Nia knew that whatever was coming, whatever humiliation Darius had planned, it was about to happen. The reception unfolded like a perfectly choreographed performance. 7 courses of food that probably cost more per plate than Nia spent on groceries in a month. Speeches from Darius's business partners about his success and vision. Toasts to the happy couple. Dancing. Laughter. Everything perfect and elegant and expensive. Nia served drinks and cleared plates and tried to be invisible, just like Darius had demanded. But she could feel his eyes on her throughout the evening. Watching. Waiting. At 10:15 p.m., Malik the wedding planner tapped on a microphone at the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention please. The groom would like to say a few words." Darius stood up, microphone in hand, looking every inch the successful CEO. The room quieted. "First of all, thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate with me and my beautiful wife." He looked at Alana and the guests, awed appropriately. "This has truly been the perfect day. But I wanted to take a moment to recognize the people who made this evening possible. The people who serve us so graciously, who work behind the scenes to create magic." He gestured toward the servers standing along the walls. "Would all our service staff please come forward?" The servers looked at each other, surprised but pleased. One by one they walked toward the front of the room. Nia didn't move. Every instinct in her body screamed danger. But Malik was gesturing to her specifically. "You too, miss. Come on up." She had no choice. Slowly, feeling like she was walking to her own execution, Nia made her way through the crowd toward the front of the ballroom. The other servers stood in a line, smiling, clearly enjoying the recognition. But Nia stood slightly apart, her hands clasped over her belly, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. "Let's give them a round of applause," Darius said, and the guests clapped politely. Then his eyes found Nia in the line. His smile never wavered. "You know, it's interesting," he continued, his voice conversational. "Some people spend their whole lives serving. Some people spend their whole lives trying to be something they're not, trying to reach for things that are beyond their station." Nia felt the room's energy shift. Guests were starting to sense that this wasn't just a thank you speech anymore. Some people, Darius went on, don't know their place. They don't understand that certain rooms, certain circles, certain levels of society aren't meant for everyone. He started walking toward the line of servers. Toward Nia. Take this server here for example, he said, and he pointed directly at her. Nia's blood turned to ice. Come here, Darius said, gesturing for her to step forward. She didn't move. I said come here, he repeated, and this time there was steel in his voice. Nia took one step forward, then another, until she stood facing him in front of 300 people. And then Darius did something that would change everything. He made a gesture behind her, so subtle the guests couldn't see it. Another server, one Nia had never spoken to, suddenly stumbled forward, bumping into Nia from behind. The small glass of water Nia had been holding flew from her hands and splashed across the front of her uniform. Gasps filled the room. Nia looked down at the water spreading across her, making the fabric cling to her pregnant belly, making her pregnancy suddenly impossible to hide or ignore. Oh no, Darius said, his voice dripping with fake concern. What a mess. Let me help you. And before Nia could react, before she could step back or protect herself, Darius reached out and grabbed the front of her dress. This is what happens, he said into the microphone, his voice suddenly hard and cruel, when you drag your past into your future. And then, in front of 300 people, in front of cameras and phones and witnesses, Darius King ripped Nia's dress open. The fabric tore with a sound that seemed to echo through the silent ballroom. Buttons flew. The dress fell open, exposing her belly completely, leaving her standing there in just her bra and torn clothing, her pregnancy on full display for everyone to see. The ballroom erupted. Gasp. Shouts. Phones immediately came up, dozens of them all recording. Camera flashes went off like lightning. Nia stood frozen, one arm crossed over her chest, the other hand instinctively covering her belly, pieces of torn fabric hanging from her shoulders. She had never felt so exposed, so humiliated, so completely destroyed in her entire life. For a moment, just one terrible moment, she was exactly what Darius had wanted her to be. Broken. Shamed. Defeated. The old Nia, the Nia from 4 days ago, would have run. She would have cried and fled and let the humiliation crush her completely. But standing there, half naked and humiliated in front of 300 strangers, Nia felt something she hadn't expected. She felt her baby kick. One strong, solid kick, as if her daughter was saying, Mama, get up. Mama, fight. And everything changed. Nia took a breath. Then another. Her hand stayed on her belly, protective and fierce. She looked up not at Darius but at the guests. At the cameras. At the witnesses. And instead of running, instead of crying, instead of giving Darius the complete victory he wanted, Nia Brooks did something no one expected. She stood up straighter. She lifted her chin. And she stayed right where she was. The room went completely silent. Even Darius seemed surprised. He had expected her to flee in tears. That was supposed to be his moment of total triumph. But Nia wasn't moving. She was breathing hard, tears streaming down her face, but she was still standing. Still there. Still refusing to disappear. And in that moment of silence, with everyone watching, with dozens of phones recording, Nia made a choice that would change everything. She looked at Darius. Then she looked at the microphone still in his hand. And without asking permission, without waiting for approval, Nia reached out and took it from him. And without asking permission, without waiting for approval, Nia reached out and took the microphone from him. Darius was so shocked he actually let it go. His mouth fell open. The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. The band had stopped playing. Servers stood frozen. 300 guests sat in absolute silence, phones still recording, all eyes on the pregnant woman in torn clothing standing at the front of the most expensive wedding any of them had ever attended. Nia looked down at the microphone in her shaking hand. She could run now. She could still drop it and flee. She could let Darius win. But then she felt another kick from her baby, and she remembered Tasha's words. Don't let him control your breakdown. Nia lifted the microphone to her lips. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but in the silent ballroom, everyone heard every word. Since I'm already exposed, she said, and her voice cracked but didn't break, let me tell you what he forgot to mention. Give me that, Darius hissed, reaching for the microphone. But Nia stepped back and Dorothy, the older server, suddenly moved to stand beside her, blocking Darius with her body. Then another server joined her. And another. Creating a barrier between Nia and the man who had tried to destroy her. My name is Nia Brooks, she continued, and now her voice was stronger. And 3 years ago, I was married to Darius King. The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Alana's hand flew to her mouth. Guests turned to each other, confused and riveted. I was married to him when he was nobody. When his company was just an idea. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, so he could quit his job and build his dream. I believed in him when no one else did. I sacrificed everything for him. Tears were streaming down Nia's face now, but her voice stayed steady. And then I got pregnant. And do you know what this man who just vowed to love and honor his wife, do you know what he did? She paused, looking directly at Darius. His face had gone from smug to pale to red with rage. He left me. He called me hood baggage. He said I would ruin his image. He offered me money to abort our baby. And when I refused, he walked away and never looked back. She's lying. Darius shouted. She's a crazy ex who can't let go. Security. But no security came. Everyone was too stunned to move. I'm 6 months pregnant with his child, Nia continued, one hand on her exposed belly. Living in a studio apartment, working any job I can find, barely able to feed myself. And this man, this successful CEO, arranged for me to be hired tonight. He requested me specifically. He wanted me here so he could humiliate me in front of all of you. He wanted me to see how far he'd risen and how low I'd fallen. She looked around at the guests. He wanted you all to see it too. To witness his final victory over the woman he threw away. Alana stood up from her seat at the head table, her face streaked with tears, her hands shaking. Darius, she said, and her voice cracked. Tell me she's lying. Please tell me she's lying. Baby, she's insane, Darius started. But then something happened that no one expected. Not even Nia. The massive projection screens on either side of the ballroom, the ones that had been showing beautiful photos of Darius and Alana throughout the evening, suddenly flickered. And new images appeared. Text messages. Screenshot after screenshot of text messages between Darius and Nia from 6 months ago. Darius, you need to get rid of it. I'll pay for everything. Nia, this is our baby. How can you say that? Darius, it's not a baby. It's a mistake. And it's going to ruin everything I've built. Nia, I can't believe you're saying this. This is your child. Darius, no. It's your problem. You're not going to drag me down with your hood mentality. I'm done. The gasps in the room grew louder. Phones were recording everything. The screens kept scrolling. More texts. More cruelty. More proof. Darius, you were never good enough for where I'm going. I need someone who fits my world. You're just ghetto trash who got lucky for a few years. Alana's hand covered her mouth, her eyes wide with horror and shock. But the screens weren't done. Now audio played. A voicemail, Darius's voice filling the ballroom through the sound system. Nia, stop calling me. Yes, the baby is mine. Yes, I know that. But I'm not going to let a career liability destroy everything I've worked for. You're on your own. Lose my number. The ballroom was in chaos now. Guests were shouting, recording, live streaming. Investors and business partners sat with shocked expressions. Community leaders were standing up, shaking their heads. Nia stood at the front, still holding the microphone, staring at the screens in shock. She hadn't done this. She didn't know how this was happening. Then she saw him. Malik, the wedding planner, standing near the AV booth in the back, his arms crossed, watching everything with a satisfied expression. Earlier that day, when Darius had cornered Nia in the hallway and threatened her, Malik had been nearby. He had heard everything. And unlike the other staff, unlike the guests who only saw Darius's polished exterior, Malik had recognized the cruelty underneath. He had made a choice. He had asked Nia quietly, during a brief moment when she'd been near the service area, if she had any proof of Darius's behavior. Anything at all. Nia had shown him her phone. The old text she'd never been able to delete. The voicemails she'd saved because part of her thought she might need them someday for child support hearings. Malik had uploaded everything to the venue's AV system. Just in case. Just in case Nia needed receipts. Just in case the truth needed to be told. And now, as Darius tried to shout over the audio, tried to claim it was fake, tried to regain control, the evidence played on screens so large that everyone in the ballroom could see and hear exactly what kind of man he really was. Turn it off. Darius shouted at the AV booth. Turn it off right now. But the tech operator, a young black man who had been watching everything with growing anger, took his time. Just long enough for everyone to see everything. Just long enough for the truth to be undeniable. When the screens finally went dark, the damage was done. Darius stood in the center of his destroyed wedding, his perfect image shattered into 1,000 pieces, while 300 guests stared at him with disgust and disappointment. And then Alana moved. She walked slowly down from the head table, her wedding dress trailing behind her, her makeup streaked with tears. Every eye in the room followed her. She walked past Darius without looking at him. She walked straight to Nia. And in a moment that would be captured on dozens of phones and replayed millions of times over the next few days, Alana Pierce removed her bridal cape, that beautiful, expensive piece of silk and lace that had cost thousands of dollars, and wrapped it around Nia's shoulders, covering her torn clothing. "I'm so sorry," Alana whispered, and her voice broke. "I'm so sorry I didn't know. I'm so sorry you had to go through this." Nia stared at her, this woman she had been prepared to hate, this woman who had seemed like the enemy, and saw only kindness and genuine remorse. "You didn't know," Nia whispered back. "He fooled you too." Alana nodded, tears falling freely now. Then she turned to face Darius. The entire ballroom watched as Alana Pierce, Instagram influencer, socialite, the woman who was supposed to be Mrs. Darius King, reached down and pulled off her massive diamond engagement ring. "I'd rather be single," she said, her voice clear and strong despite her tears, "than married to a coward." And she threw the ring. It hit Darius in the chest and fell to the floor with a small final sound that seemed impossibly loud in the silent ballroom. Then Alana turned, took Nia's hand, and together they began to walk toward the exit. The guests parted like the Red Sea, creating a path for them. Some were recording. Some were crying. Some were applauding, slow claps that grew louder and louder until the ballroom echoed with the sound. "Alana!" Darius shouted. "Alana, don't you dare walk out on me. Do you know what you're throwing away?" But Alana didn't stop. Didn't turn around. She just kept walking, holding Nia's hand, her bridal train flowing behind her like a cape of her own. They were almost to the exit when a voice rang out from the crowd. "Mr. King." Everyone turned. An older black woman, elegant in a purple gown with silver hair styled perfectly, stood up from her table. She had the kind of presence that commanded attention, the kind of authority that made even Darius stop shouting. "Judge Simone Carter," she said, introducing herself to the room. "I've been sitting here watching this travesty unfold. And I want to make something very clear." She looked directly at Darius with the kind of withering stare that had probably made criminals crumble in her courtroom for decades. "Under the laws of this state, Mr. King, your child is entitled to support whether you like it or not. That young woman and her baby have legal rights. And I can assure you that after what I've witnessed tonight, after what everyone here has witnessed and recorded, you will fulfill your obligations. I'll make sure of it personally." Other voices joined hers. Business partners stood up, shaking their heads. A man in an expensive suit, clearly an investor, spoke loudly. "Darius, I think we need to have a conversation about your position with our firm. This behavior is completely unacceptable." Another voice, "The King Financial Board will be holding an emergency meeting first thing Monday morning." A woman who had been sitting at a prominent table, "I want you removed from the Children's Hospital Charity Board immediately. We can't have someone like you representing our organization." One by one, people who had come to celebrate Darius were now condemning him. His perfect image, his carefully constructed reputation, his entire public persona was collapsing in real time. Darius stood in the center of it all, his face red, his hands shaking with rage and humiliation, watching his world fall apart. At the exit, Nia paused and looked back one last time. She saw him standing there, alone, abandoned by his bride, condemned by his guests, his wedding in ruins around him. And she felt no satisfaction, no joy in his suffering. Just a quiet sense of something shifting, something heavy lifting off her chest. She handed the microphone to a nearby server, pulled Alana's bridal cape closer around her shoulders, and walked out of the Grand Marquis Hotel with her head high. Dorothy, the kind older server, followed them, along with several other staff members who had been moved by what they'd witnessed. Outside, the cool November air felt like freedom. Tasha was waiting at the staff entrance. She had come to pick Nia up, not knowing what had happened inside. When she saw Nia in a bridal cape with torn clothing underneath, tears streaming down her face, and a beautiful black woman in a wedding dress holding her hand, Tasha's mouth fell open. "Girl," Tasha said slowly, "what the hell happened in there?" And for the first time in 6 months, Nia Brooks laughed. It started as a small sound, almost a sob, but then it grew into real laughter, the kind that comes from releasing something that's been held too tight for too long. "I'll tell you everything," Nia said. "But first, can we just get away from here?" "Come to my place," Alana said suddenly. "Both of you. Please. It's close by and it's safe and I don't want to be alone right now." Tasha looked at Nia, eyebrows raised in a silent question. Nia nodded. "Okay then," Tasha said. "Let's get you ladies out of here before the media shows up." But it was already too late for that. By the time they climbed into Tasha's car, the first clips had already hit Twitter. By the time they reached Alana's apartment in a luxury building downtown, hashtags were trending. Hashtag King Wedding Disaster. Hashtag Darius King Exposed. Hashtag Pregnant Ex-Wife. Within 2 hours, the videos had been viewed millions of times. Within 4 hours, news outlets were picking up the story. Within 6 hours, Darius King's face was on every gossip site, every social media platform, every news feed. But Nia, Alana, and Tasha didn't see any of that yet. They were sitting in Alana's living room, an apartment so beautiful it looked like it belonged in a magazine, drinking tea and piecing together what had happened. "I should have seen it," Alana said, still in her wedding dress, mascara smudged down her face. There were signs. Little things. The way he talked about people who were beneath him. The way he obsessed over image. But I thought I was special. I thought he really loved me. "He's good at making people believe that," Nia said quietly. "I believed it too once." "How long were you together?" Alana asked. 5 years total. Married for 2. Alana shook her head. "And he just left? When you got pregnant?" 2 weeks after I told him. He didn't even try to make it work. Just walked away like our entire relationship meant nothing." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Alana reached over and took Nia's hand. "I'm glad you were there tonight," she said. "I know that sounds crazy. I know you didn't want to be there, that it was terrible and humiliating and cruel. But if you hadn't been there, I would have married him. I would have legally bound myself to a man who could do something like that to another human being. You saved me." Nia hadn't thought about it that way. She had been so focused on her own pain, her own humiliation, that she hadn't considered that maybe, in some strange way, what happened tonight had saved both of them. "We saved each other," Nia said finally. Around midnight, Tasha's phone started buzzing non-stop. Then Alana's. Then even Nia's old phone that barely worked. "You need to see this," Tasha said, turning her phone around. The screen showed Twitter, and Nia's face was everywhere. Videos of her taking the microphone. Videos of Darius ripping her clothing. Videos of the text messages on the screens. Videos of Alana giving her the bridal cape and walking out. The headlines were explosive. Tech CEO's wedding implodes after he publicly humiliates pregnant ex-wife. Black excellence or black villain? Darius King's fall from grace. Bride walks out after groom exposes true colors. The comment sections were filled with support for Nia and Alana, and absolute condemnation for Darius. "He's disgusting. Imagine abandoning your pregnant wife and then trying to humiliate her publicly." The way she took that microphone and told her truth though. That is strength. And the bride walking out and giving her the cape? That's sisterhood. I hope she takes him for everything in child support. But there were also practical offers. People asking how they could help Nia. Women sharing resources for pregnant mothers. Lawyers offering pro bono services. Even a few business people suggesting that Nia should tell her story publicly, that there was power in her voice. "This is insane," Nia whispered, scrolling through her phone. "I'm trending. We're all trending." "Welcome to the internet," Alana said with a sad smile. "Where people become famous overnight for both the best and worst reasons." That night, Nia slept in Alana's guest room, in the softest bed she'd felt in years, wearing borrowed clothes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Tasha slept on the couch, refusing to leave either of them alone. And across the city, in his empty loft apartment, Darius King sat in the dark scrolling through his phone, watching his life fall apart one viral video at a time. Sunday morning, Nia woke up to sunlight streaming through expensive curtains and the smell of bacon cooking. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then it all came back. The wedding. The humiliation. The microphone. The truth. She walked into the kitchen to find Alana making breakfast, still in sweatpants, her face bare of makeup, looking more real and human than she had at any point yesterday. "Morning," Alana said. "I made too much food. Stress cooking. Hope you're hungry." Over breakfast, with Tasha awake now and demanding coffee, they talked about what came next. "The press is going to be relentless," Alana warned. "I've dealt with this before, smaller scale, but still. They're going to want interviews, statements, photos. You need to decide what you're comfortable with." "I don't know what I'm comfortable with," Nia admitted. "I just wanted to survive. I just wanted to pay my rent. I never wanted any of this attention." "But you have it now," Tasha said, always practical. "The question is, what are you going to do with it?" Before Nia could answer, Alana's phone rang. She looked at the screen and her eyes widened. "It's Judge Carter. From last night." She answered on speaker. Hello. Miss Pierce, Miss Brooks, I hope I'm not calling too early. Judge Simone Carter's authoritative voice filled the kitchen. I wanted to reach out while everything is still fresh. Miss Brooks, I'd like to offer you legal assistance. Pro bono. I have connections with some excellent family law attorneys who would be honored to help you file for child support and, if you choose, pursue a case for emotional distress and harassment. Nia's hand went to her belly. I don't have money for lawyers. I said pro bono, dear. That means free. After what I witnessed last night, after what the entire world has now witnessed, I think it's important that you have the legal support you need. Will you consider it? Nia looked at Tasha, then at Alana. Both nodded encouragingly. Yes, Nia said. Yes, I would be grateful for that help. Excellent. I'll have my colleague contact you tomorrow to set up a meeting. And Ms. Brooks, one more thing. What you did last night took tremendous courage. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. After the call ended, they sat in silence for a moment. Things are really changing, aren't they? Nia said quietly. Yeah, Tasha said. They really are. Over the next few days, the story exploded beyond anything any of them could have imagined. Major news outlets picked it up. Talk shows discussed it. Social media couldn't stop talking about it. Hashtags proliferated. Hashtag justice for Nia, hashtag Darius King cancelled, hashtag bridal cape sisterhood. And the consequences for Darius came swift and brutal. By Monday morning, his board of directors had called an emergency meeting. By Monday afternoon, he had been placed on temporary leave from his own company pending an investigation into his conduct. By Tuesday, 3 major investors had pulled their funding from King Financial Technologies, spooked by the terrible publicity and the possibility that Darius's judgment was too flawed to be trusted with their money. By Wednesday, Darius had lost his position on 2 charity boards and been uninvited from a major tech conference where he was supposed to be a keynote speaker. His social media accounts, once filled with admiring comments, were now flooded with criticism so harsh that he stopped reading and eventually made everything private. Meanwhile, Nia's life was changing in ways she never expected. Judge Carter's colleague, a fierce family law attorney named Patricia Morrison, took her case immediately. They filed for child support with mountains of evidence, including all the viral videos and text messages. Patricia assured Nia that Darius would be paying substantial monthly support, and probably back support as well. But more than that, opportunities started coming. A producer from a podcast called Truth Tellers reached out, wanting to hear Nia's full story. Not the gossip version, but the real story of struggling as a pregnant woman, of being abandoned, of finding strength. A book agent emailed, suggesting that Nia's story could be turned into a memoir that might help other women in similar situations. Local news stations wanted interviews. National morning shows extended invitations. And most surprisingly, women started reaching out. Dozens at first, then hundreds, then thousands of women who had been abandoned while pregnant, or abused by partners, or trapped in situations where powerful men used their resources to hurt them. You should read some of these messages, Tasha said one evening, scrolling through Nia's email on the laptop Alana had loaned her. These women are pouring their hearts out. They're saying you gave them courage. That seeing you stand up made them realize they could stand up too. Nia sat on Alana's couch, her hand on her belly as always, reading message after message. Stories that broke her heart. Stories that made her angry. Stories that reminded her she wasn't alone. I want to help them, she said quietly. I don't know how, but I want to do something. Then let's do something, Alana said. She had been staying in her apartment, avoiding the media herself, dealing with her own fallout from the destroyed wedding. But she had also been thinking. I have a platform. You have a story. Between us, we could actually make a difference. Over the next week, working together, Nia and Alana created something new. A website. A support network. A space for women who had been abandoned during pregnancy, who were struggling alone, who needed resources and community and hope. They called it Rising Mothers. Alana used her social media reach to spread the word. Nia did her first public interview, a podcast where she told her story in full, holding nothing back. The episode was downloaded over 1 million times in the first week. Donations started coming in. Small amounts from regular people, larger amounts from organizations that supported women in crisis. Lawyers volunteered their time. Therapists offered free counseling sessions. Even businesses reached out, wanting to offer job opportunities for pregnant women who were being discriminated against in hiring. What started as a website became a movement. And through it all, Nia felt her daughter growing inside her, kicking more strongly every day as if saying, Mama, look what we're building. But Darius wasn't done yet. 3 weeks after the wedding disaster, Nia received a certified letter at Alana's apartment, where she had been staying temporarily. It was from Darius's lawyers. He was offering her a settlement. A large settlement. $200,000 in exchange for her silence. For signing an NDA. For stopping all interviews, shutting down rising mothers, and never speaking about him again. Nia sat with the letter in her hands, staring at the number. $200,000. More money than she had ever imagined having. Enough to get her own apartment, a real apartment. Enough to prepare for the baby. Enough to stop worrying about money for years. All she had to do was be quiet. "What are you going to do?" Tasha asked. Nia thought about it. She really thought about it. She thought about the bills still waiting at her old apartment. She thought about the fears she'd lived with for months. She thought about how easy it would be to just take the money and disappear. But then she thought about the messages she'd been receiving. The women who said she gave them courage. The mothers who said seeing her stand up made them believe they could too. The community they were building, the change they were starting to make. "No," Nia said firmly. "I'm not taking it." "Are you sure?" Alana asked gently. "That's a lot of money, Nia. And you need money. There's no shame in taking care of yourself and your baby." "I know," Nia said. "But if I take this money and sign that paper, I'm telling every woman who reached out to me that silence is worth more than truth. I'm telling my daughter that you should shut up when powerful men offer you money. And I can't do that. I won't." The next day, Patricia Morrison sent Darius's lawyers a response on Nia's behalf. It was simple and direct. "Ms. Brooks declines your offer. She will continue to exercise her First Amendment right to tell her story. The child support proceedings will continue as scheduled. We'll see you in court." When Darius got the response, he reportedly threw his phone across his office. A month later, Nia and Darius faced each other in family court. He sat with his expensive legal team, wearing a suit that cost thousands of dollars, looking every bit the successful businessman despite his tarnished reputation. Nia sat with Patricia Morrison and Judge Simone Carter, who had come for support, wearing a simple maternity dress that Alana had bought her, 8 months pregnant now and glowing despite her nervousness. The proceedings were quick. The evidence was overwhelming. The viral videos. The text messages. Darius's own recorded words. His attempts to bribe Nia into silence, which Patricia presented as evidence of his bad faith. The judge, a stern black woman in her 60s, looked at Darius with barely concealed disgust. "Mr. King, I've seen a lot of things in my years on this bench, but the callousness you've displayed toward your own child and the mother of that child is truly remarkable. You will pay child support in the amount of $4,500 per month, effective immediately, as well as $20,000 in back support for the months you've provided nothing. You will also cover all medical expenses related to the birth. And Mr. King, let me be very clear. If you attempt to intimidate, harass, or otherwise interfere with Ms. Brooks's life or her right to speak about her experiences, I will hold you in contempt of court. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," Darius said through gritted teeth. When they left the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Cameras everywhere. Questions shouted from all directions. Patricia stepped forward to give a brief statement, but then Nia touched her arm. "Can I say something?" she asked. Patricia nodded and stepped aside. Nia stood on the courthouse steps, 8 months pregnant, the winter sun bright behind her, and she spoke directly to the cameras. "Today the court recognized what should have been obvious from the beginning. That my daughter deserves support from both her parents. That I deserve to be treated with dignity. And that the truth matters more than reputation or money or power." She paused, taking a breath. "To every woman watching this who's been abandoned, who's struggling alone, who's been told to be quiet or ashamed, I want you to know something. You are not alone. Your story matters. Your truth matters. And you have the right to speak it, no matter who tries to silence you." The clip played on every news channel that night. And Nia Brooks, the broke pregnant woman who had been hired to serve drinks at her ex-husband's wedding, became the voice of something bigger than herself. 2 weeks later, on a cold December night, Nia went into labor. Tasha drove her to the hospital, speeding through red lights and cursing at traffic. Alana met them there, having canceled a brand deal meeting to be present. And 12 hours later, after pain and fear and pushing and crying and more pain, Nia gave birth to a baby girl. She was perfect. 6 pounds 8 ounces. 10 fingers 10 toes. A head full of dark curly hair and eyes that looked around with what seemed like curiosity at this strange new world. "She's beautiful," Tasha whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She's perfect," Alana said, squeezing Nia's hand. "And Nia, exhausted and overwhelmed and more in love than she'd ever been in her life, held her daughter and whispered, "Your name is Imani. It means faith. Because even when I had nothing else, I had faith that we would be okay." Imani looked up at her mother and made a small sound, and Nia felt something settle in her chest. Oh, the beginning of healing. Over the next year, life transformed in ways Nia never could have imagined. Rising Mothers grew from a website into a full organization with funding, volunteers, and real resources to help women in crisis. They provided legal assistance, job training, housing support, and community for pregnant women who had been abandoned or abused. Nia became the organization's director and spokesperson, traveling to speak at events, appearing on panels, telling her story over and over not because she enjoyed reliving the pain, but because every time she told it, another woman found the courage to tell hers. Alana, who had initially struggled with her own shame and embarrassment over the wedding disaster, became Nia's co-founder and the organization's director of outreach. She used her influencer platform for good, raising awareness and funds, proving that beauty and wealth could be used for more than just appearances. And Tasha, loyal Tasha, became Rising Mothers operations manager, using her street smarts and no-nonsense attitude to keep everything running smoothly. The child support payments came every month like clockwork. Darius never tried to see Imani. Never asked about her. Never acknowledged her existence beyond the legal requirement to pay. And Nia realized she was grateful for that. Her daughter didn't need a father who saw her as a burden. She had a mother who saw her as a blessing, and a community of people who loved her. Darius's company never fully recovered. The scandal had tainted everything. Investors remained wary. Clients took their business elsewhere. Eventually, King Financial Technologies was quietly absorbed by a larger company, and Darius King, once the face of Black excellence and entrepreneurial success, became a cautionary tale. A reminder that character matters more than charisma, that how you treat people in private eventually becomes public, and that cruelty always has consequences. 1 year after the wedding disaster, Nia stood on a stage at a community center, speaking to a room full of young Black women about resilience, survival, and refusing to be silenced. In the audience, Alana sat with 1-year-old Imani on her lap. The baby was playing with Alana's necklace, babbling happily, completely unaware that her mother was sharing their story with the world. Tasha sat next to them, recording the speech on her phone to post on Rising Mothers' social media later. And in the back, taking notes and nodding along, sat Judge Simone Carter, who had become both a mentor and a friend. "I want to end with this," Nia said, looking out at the young faces watching her so intently. "A year ago I was at my lowest point. Broke, pregnant, alone, and desperate. A year ago, a man I once loved tried to humiliate me in front of hundreds of people because he thought it would prove his power. He thought tearing me down would make him look bigger. He thought exposing my poverty and my pregnancy and my pain would destroy me." She paused and smiled. "But here's what he didn't understand. Here's what anyone who tries to silence you or shame you or break you will never understand. When someone tries to rip you open to hurt you, light gets in through the tears. Truth gets in. Strength gets in. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to stand in that moment of exposure instead of running from it, you find out that you were never as broken as they wanted you to believe." The room erupted in applause. And Nia looked out at all those faces, all those young women who had their own stories of pain and survival, and she felt the weight of the past year lift just a little bit more. After the event, Nia, Alana, and Tasha walked through the evening streets with Imani in a stroller, heading to Nia's apartment. Not the studio she'd lived in during those desperate months, but a real 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Nothing fancy, nothing like Alana's luxury building, but solid and stable in theirs. "You know what's funny?" Alana said as they walked. "A year ago I thought I knew what I wanted. The perfect wedding, the successful husband, the Instagram-ready life. I thought that was happiness. And now?" Nia asked. "Now I know that the worst day of my life led to the best year." Alana looked at Nia, then at Imani sleeping peacefully in the stroller. "I found my purpose. I found real friendship. I found out who I actually am when nobody's watching. I wouldn't change what happened. Not for anything. Not even to avoid the embarrassment of being left at the altar in front of 300 people?" Tasha asked with a grin. "Not even that," Alana said firmly. "Because that embarrassment saved me from something worse. A lifetime married to someone who would have broken me slowly instead of publicly." They reached Nia's building and stood outside for a moment, the three of them looking at each other in the glow of the streetlights. "We did something good," Tasha said quietly. "We took something ugly and made it into something that actually helps people. That's rare." "We're not done yet," Nia said. There are still so many women who need help, so many stories that need to be told. Then we'll keep going, Alana said. As long as it takes. That night, after Tasha and Alana left, after Imani was fed and changed and sleeping soundly in her crib, Nia sat in her living room with a cup of tea and allowed herself to really think about everything that had happened. A year ago she had been desperate and terrified. She had stood in that ballroom in torn clothing, exposed and humiliated, certain that her life was over. But that moment of complete vulnerability, that moment when she had nothing left to lose, had become the moment when everything changed. When she stopped accepting the story Darius tried to write about her and started writing her own. She thought about the thousands of women who had reached out. The ones who said her courage gave them courage. The ones who left abusive situations because seeing her stand up reminded them they could too. The ones who stopped accepting silence as the price of survival. And she thought about her daughter, sleeping peacefully in the next room, who would grow up knowing that her mother had been knocked down but had gotten back up. Who would learn that your worst moment doesn't have to define you. Who would understand that sometimes the people who try to break you end up being the ones who set you free. Nia's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Her heart skipped, worried it might be Darius trying to contact her through a new number. But when she opened it, she saw it was from a woman named Jennifer, the same woman who had called her a year ago to offer her the wedding job. I don't know if you remember me. I'm the one who hired you for that event. I want you to know that I had no idea what Mr. King had planned. I was just following instructions from the client. But I've been following your work with Rising Mothers, and I want to apologize for my part in what happened, however unknowing it was. And I want to donate to your organization. Because what you're doing matters. You're helping women like my sister who went through something similar. Thank you for turning something terrible into something beautiful. Nia read the message twice, then typed a response. Thank you for reaching out. I forgive you. And thank you for the support. Every woman who stands up makes it easier for the next one. We're all in this together. She set her phone down and looked around her apartment. At the photos on the wall of her with Imani, with Tasha, with Alana. At the Rising Mothers poster hanging near the door. At the small bookshelf filled with books about motherhood and activism and black women's history. This wasn't the life she had imagined for herself. It wasn't the fairy tale she had dreamed of when she first fell in love with Darius. It was smaller in some ways, harder in others. But it was real. It was hers. And it was enough. In the nursery, Imani made a small sound in her sleep. Nia got up and walked to the doorway, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall in the gentle rhythm of baby breathing. We made it, baby girl, she whispered. We really made it. And for the first time in a very long time, Nia Brooks went to bed not worrying about tomorrow, not mourning yesterday, but simply grateful for today. Because she had learned the hardest lesson there is. That sometimes you have to be torn apart before you can put yourself back together. That humiliation can become transformation. That the moment you stop letting someone else define your worth is the moment you become truly free. Darius King had tried to destroy her. He had tried to prove that she was nothing. Instead, he had proven that she was everything she needed to be. Strong. Resilient. Unbreakable. And in trying to write the ending to her story, he had given her the beginning of something far better than anything he ever could have offered. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next